Greetings from the Lincoln-Alexander School of Law, and welcome to our Lincoln100 celebration. Today is a very special Lincoln-Alexander Day. It is the 100th anniversary of the birth of our namesake. My name is Kanwar Brar, and I'm a first-year law student. I'm one of the co-founding members and vice president of the Law and Policy Society at the school. I'm also volunteering with Pro Bono Students Canada to provide public legal education in areas of housing and immigration law. And I'm proud to introduce my co-MC, Safia Thompson, who is a second-year law student and co-president and founder of the Black Law Students Association. Last year, Safia was a summer student at McCarthy Tetro LLP and will be returning this year to continue exploring multiple practice areas of law.
Thanks, Kanwar, for that warm introduction. We are thrilled to be your hosts today. We've got a fantastic celebration lined up for the next hour, including artistic performances, special messages from people who admired Mr. Alexander, a portrait and mural unveiling, a major announcement, and a conversation with the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. In addition to watching, you can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag Lincoln100 and tagging us at ryerson.ca.
Before we formally begin our celebration, it is important that we recognize the land on which the Lincoln-Alexander School of Law operates. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, European settlers, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. This land acknowledgement is only a first step to honoring the contributions and sacrifices of Indigenous peoples and raising awareness of the systemic inequities experienced by Indigenous communities. Let's challenge ourselves to take a moment today to consider how we participate in reconciliation and advance justice for Indigenous communities. At this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, the president of Ryerson University. Mohammed Lashmi is an internationally recognized researcher and accomplished academic administrator. Mr. Lashmi has been a key contributor to the transformational growth and the development of the university for more than a decade. Welcome, President Lashmi.
Thank you very much, Safia and Kanwar. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this celebration. I would also like to extend a very special welcome and my thanks to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for taking the time to join us this afternoon. How pleased we are today to celebrate the life of Lincoln Alexander. Few names in the history of our province and our country carry with it such a profound legacy and transformation and change. We are so proud that our law school bears his name. By choosing his name, we have made a commitment to continue his work and his passion. Lincoln Alexander lived a remarkable life, a life of firsts, a life of breaking boundaries, a life of being the change. Our world has faced unbelievable disruption and uncertainty over the past 2 years. At this special moment in history, we look to people such as Lincoln Alexander for inspiration. His resilience, his spirit, his unwillingness to accept the unacceptable are the fuel for a new generation. A new generation ready for change. The momentum for that change stands on the shoulders of Lincoln Alexander and those like him. Today, let us celebrate and remember and confirm our commitment to build a law school that lives up to his legacy and his life. Please join me now in watching a short video celebrating the life and legacy of Lincoln Alexander.
a trailblazer. Born of West Indian immigrant parents in 1920s Ontario, Lincoln Alexander learned early on that if he wanted to live in an equitable world, he'd have to build it himself. He started by challenging the status quo from a young age, from being the first black child in his kindergarten class to the only black man in his division of the Royal Canadian Air Force. After the end of World War II, Alexander was honorably discharged from the military and turned his sights to higher education. At that time, black men faced limited job prospects, so Alexander, being the entrepreneur that he was, chose to pursue a field in which he could be self-employed, a field that would allow him to improve his own life and the lives of others. He chose law. Upon graduating from Osgoode Hall Law School in 1953, he began shaping not only the legal profession in Canada, but the socio-political landscape too. It started with him becoming a partner in the first interracial law firm in Canada, where he championed diversity and racial equality, marking the beginning of advocacy efforts he continued throughout his life. After several years of practicing law, he was appointed Queen's Counsel, a title used to recognize Canadian lawyers for exceptional merit and contribution to the legal profession. From there, Alexander made his foray into politics. In politics, as in law, Link, as he came to be endearingly called, set about setting new precedents at every turn. First chair of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, first black chair of Ontario's Workers' Compensation Board, first black member of Parliament in Canada's House of Commons, first black federal cabinet minister, first black lieutenant governor of Ontario. And to honor his indelible contributions to society, Alexander was later appointed to the Order of Ontario and named a companion to the Order of Canada. His long lists of firsts and honors are a testament to his resilience, his entrepreneurial spirit, and his drive to advance society towards a more equitable future. Noble values that also underpin our law school, which aims to shape the trailblazers of tomorrow. Lawyers who embrace diversity and inclusion, advocate for access to justice, and challenge the status quo, just as Alexander did before them.
On this special day, we are honored to celebrate the remarkable achievements of our namesake and inspire the next generation of trailblazers who will continue his legacy for the next 100 years and beyond.
What a wonderful video. It is now my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker. C'est avec un grand plaisir que j'introduis le 29e lieutenant-gouverneur de l'Ontario, l'Honorable Elizabeth Downswell. Ms. Downswell has served the public interest at all orders of Ontario and in the private sector. Since taking office in 2014, Ms. Downswell has challenged Ontarians to think deeply about their role, not just as a residents of the province of Ontario, but also as global citizens and leaders of tomorrow. It is my distinct honor to welcome once again to our university community, the Honorable Elizabeth Downswell.
President Lashmi, Prime Minister Trudeau, Minister Ian, members of the Alexander family and the Ryerson community. Happy Lincoln Alexander Day on this 100th anniversary of his birth. From machinist to corporal, from lawyer to proud statesman, from lieutenant governor to chancellor, there are simply so many fields of endeavor, so many hearts touched and inspired, so many ways in which the Honourable Lincoln Alexander left his mark on Canadian life. Mercifully, I need only focus upon one role in his long and distinguished career, one that I have the great privilege and joy to share with him, that of the Queen's representative in Ontario. It's not enough to say that Link transcended the vice-regal role, for it's more accurate, more necessary to observe that he rewrote and redefined it. That was true of every job he undertook. Everywhere, anywhere he could, he blazed a new trail and knocked down barriers wherever they stood. As Lieutenant Governor, he understood that the very best of this role can be to simply hold up a mirror to Ontario, to reflect the hopes and dreams of its citizens and their concerns and difficulties too. As the first Black Canadian to represent the Crown in Canada, Link not only symbolized progress and change, he fought for it, making it his priority to promote multiculturalism and the cause of racial justice through this office. It's a crucial thing about this mirror that its reflection is clearest, most revealing, when people can see themselves in the person who holds it, when they can be sure that this individual cares deeply about what it illuminates, not just those who prosper from privilege, but so too those who suffer from inequality and injustice. It is this man, this tradition, to whom we pay tribute today. And it's only right that we do so at this moment in time, as we continue to confront the complex challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. For it is now that we might look to Lincoln's example for courage, for compassion, for a renewed determination. To ask, as he did, how can we build a stronger, more resilient province and country in which we can all share equal opportunity and equal pride? In this spirit, I know that Link would be proud of this school's foundational commitment to reconciliation, to build relationships with and to serve Indigenous communities. And throughout the entire latter half of his career, Link was absolutely devoted to education and youth. He believed to his depth in the boundless potential the next generation holds. And in so many ways, the Lincoln-Alexander School of Law is therefore a living tribute, because this place carries his legacy in name, but more significantly embodies it in practice, forming trailblazers in his mold, those who are fearless, those who are willing to question the status quo and fight for others. To Ryerson students, your efforts are an extraordinary tribute to him, and I'm so looking forward to seeing what the students and faculty of this esteemed institution will continue to contribute. Thank you for allowing me to reflect on and to honor the incredible legacy of Lincoln-Alexander. Together, we will ensure that it carries on for another century. Thank you, merci, and miigwech.
Thank you, Your Honor, for those very poignant words and for reminding us of Lincoln-Alexander's incredible legacy. We are privileged to have you with us today. At this time, I'd like to welcome Erica Alexander, the granddaughter of Lincoln Alexander, who is representing the Alexander family at today's celebration.
Hello, my name is Erica Alexander. I am the eldest granddaughter of the Honourable Lincoln Alexander, and I am so honored to be here today celebrating Lincoln Alexander Day, as well as my grandfather's 100th birthday. It's definitely a great blessing and a great recognition that we're all able to participate in today. In my heart, I believe in the importance of celebrating Lincoln Alexander Day because it recognizes a person who dedicated their life to the betterment of our entire nation. A person who traveled across the country to meet with people from various backgrounds and ethnicities, from farmers to businessmen to elders and youth alike. A person who led by example and carried themselves always in their truest and most honest form, and a person who accepted others for who they truly were and enjoyed sharing and hearing stories from those he met along the way. I truly believe my grandfather was an example of all of these traits, and in recognizing these qualities and celebrating him in such a grand gesture as having a national day named after him, I think it's important to embody these traits ourselves, regardless of one's livelihood, not only to help the growth of our communities, but also the growth of our own families and ourselves in our own journey. This January 21st is especially exciting because of the celebration of my grandfather's 100th birthday. It was always my grandfather's goal to live to be 100 years old. And even though he made it to the accomplished age of 90, I sometimes imagine what my grandfather would have been doing with these extra 10 years. I wonder how he would be managing living in the very unpredictable times that we are, and even with the journey that he had throughout his own life. But since my grandfather passed away in 2012, there has been so much wonderful celebration and recognition of his life, including Ryerson's own law school being named in his honor. And even without him being here in the physical form, the memory of his life accomplishments and experiences continue to inspire and influence those who come to recognize his story within themselves. My grandfather had a long list of outstanding accomplishments, but in my opinion, what really defined my grandfather's journey were the setbacks he overcame early in his career. Lincoln faced extreme adversity in the form of racism, whether it was during his time in the Canadian Air Force or him applying to white-collar positions and being denied because of his brown skin. And he set out, and even with his university degree or not having the support of his community when he set out from being a lawyer, Lincoln broke through these barriers with great force and always determined and confident to continue on his desired path. For me, his greatest accomplishments was his consistent drive to succeed and in the way that he saw fit and what made his life a personal journey for himself. So I really just would like to thank Ryerson Law School for inviting me here, and thank you to Her Honor and the Prime Minister for being here as well to celebrate such a wonderful day. Thank you, Safia.
Thank you, Erica, for that very moving tribute. We are grateful to have you and your family joining us today, and that you've allowed us to continue Mr. Alexander's legacy through the students who will graduate from this law school. Mr. Alexander was never afraid to speak his mind and always stood up for the truth, even in the face of adversity. Reading about his life and stories inspires me to become a better law student by engaging holistically in my classes and outside. I'd now like to welcome Rendell Ajay, entrepreneur, speaker, and spoken word practitioner. He was recently appointed Ontario's first poet laureate. Rendell was named CBC Metro Morning's Torontonian of the Year in 2015, and Now Magazine's Local Hero in 2017. In 2020, Rendell opened up for President Barack Obama at the Economic Club of Canada. Rendell will be sharing a poem that he wrote to commemorate Lincoln Alexander's life and legacy.
Hello, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to write this poem in honor of Lincoln Alexander. His legacy is something that has really inspired me. In writing this poem, I just thought about what it means to leave a legacy behind, to live a life of purpose. And I hope this poem inspires you to live a life of purpose, to leave a legacy behind that others can benefit from. Lincoln Alexander once stated, "It is not your duty to be average. It is your duty to set a higher example for others to follow." He set some of the highest examples possible. Only few ever reached the precipice of such prestigious positions, despite the myriad of obstacles. As the first Black Canadian to serve in the House of Commons, he changed the course of Canadian history, serving 4 terms in provincial ministry. He rewrote the narrative and became the author of his own destiny. On this 100th birthday, we celebrate his embellished legacy. Go to school, you're a little black boy. His mother's words of wisdom given to one of our nation's pride and joy. Words so simple yet profound. These words built the gift that is Lincoln Macaulay Alexander. His mother taught him the value of education. His father taught him the value of service. He learned from these 2 principles and found his sense of purpose. His way of advocating for racial equality was exemplified through his actions. Education and service provided a perspective for his passions. He refused to be defined by the ignorant perception of others or limited by a system that wasn't built to see him succeed, nothing and no one would stand in the way of his dreams. In one of his most courageous moments at the time, Link challenged an authority figure to think of his leadership position and choice of words after using a racial slur. Despite the risk, his integrity wouldn't allow him to be silenced. Moving forward, he took his own advice as guidance. Lincoln Alexander often told young people to challenge those in positions of power, despite the heavy penalty they may pay, but urged sometimes challenging authority is the only way to create lasting change. No one ever said it would be easy being the first, especially during a time when civil rights leaders were seeing the worst. As a trailblazer, it was his spirit that helped him persist, paving a way for many generations through his empathy and grit. He became one of 4 partners in creating Canada's first multicultural law firms, before being appointed to the Queen's Counsel in 1965. He believed in taking action and never complaining on the sidelines. His life's work is exemplary and sublime. His accomplishments have set a precedence for us to follow. Despite the mountains we climb, we must carry his torch towards tomorrow. He settled for nothing less than the best that he possessed, inspiring us all to strive for excellence. As a public servant, he sought to solve social problems. The one thing I admire most about him, failure, was never an option. As the 24th Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, he was active in multicultural affairs. He approached his work with wisdom, compassion, and care, going the lengths that very few would even dare. In every role he was appointed, he advocated for equity, diversity, and inclusion. He listened to the people, collaboratively creating solutions. Even in his elderly age, he remained a student of life. He was a visionary with extraordinary insight. There are hidden treasures buried within us all, a purpose in which we are destined and called to use our gifts to serve each day, building foundations with every brick we lay. With each rising and fallen sun, we are propelled to excavate the truth within us, creating a legacy that transforms generations. We are both the actors and the directors of our lives, and the world is our stage, waiting for us to extract these gifts within our time, paving a new way. Like Lincoln Alexander, we all have the propensity to create lasting change. There are few people who have been decorated with such excellent accomplishments. I am moved and inspired by Lincoln Alexander. His tenacity and ability to see the good in others despite what they saw in him. I challenge you to build your path and leave a legacy, one that is purposeful and promising. Look within to find your gift, your destiny. Leave this world better than you found it. Discover your precipice and move mountains. Like Lincoln Alexander, let nothing and no one stand in your way. May your talents serve all Canadians with each and every brick you lay. Thank you all so much for having me today. I hope this poem inspired you to continue living your legacy. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Randall. To mark the 100th anniversary of her namesake, the law school is proud to unveil a special portrait and a custom designed mural. The portrait was photographed by the internationally recognized Al Gilbert. Mr. Gilbert was a portrait photographer whose prominent subjects range from local entrepreneurs and community leaders to jazz musicians and heads of state. Recognized for his artistic contributions, Mr. Gilbert was named to the Order of Canada, and the mural was designed by the talented Julia Davidova, who is part of her law school team.
Lincoln, on behalf of all Ontario, I want to say thank you. You remind us that determination, hard work, and compassion are what make Canada great. Our province and our country are much richer for your presence.
That was wonderful. I'm really looking forward to when we can all safely return to campus and see the portrait and mural in person. A special shout out to Charmaine McKenzie, Executive Director of Strategic Initiatives and Operations, and to her fellow law students, Anthony Brum, Deborah Lim, Oksana Romanov, and Joshua Wallace for participating in our unveiling. It is now my privilege to welcome the Honourable Marcy Ian, Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, to share her reflections. Prior to joining politics, Minister Ian was a journalist and a community leader dedicated to amplifying the voices of the unheard. We are proud to say that Minister Ian is a graduate of Ryerson University and previously served as a distinguished visiting professor and on the university's Board of Governors. Welcome, Minister Ian.
Thank you so much, Kanwar, for that kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from my home in Toronto, from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, which is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Happy Lincoln Alexander Day. It is wonderful to celebrate this legend, a man of many firsts, as we've heard today. Born here in Toronto, Mr. Alexander spent a large part of his life in Hamilton, and his public service career spanned decades, and he served each role with tenacity and wisdom and grit. His courage to challenge the status quo paved the way forward for so many Black Canadians who saw themselves reflected in him. He was a champion of equity and a trailblazer who broke through barriers. Most importantly, he focused on working with youth while combating discrimination within their communities. So today we celebrate his outstanding service to this country with a law school named in his honor. What a full circle moment. Mr. Alexander's life reminds us that beyond the work of becoming a first, there is a real responsibility to make sure that one is not the last. I am proof of that. I stand on his shoulders. I stand on his legacy. We all share the same duty to invite more people to stand beside us and to leave the door wide open for many more to follow. And as was noted, and many of you know, I was a broadcast journalist, and I entered politics to use my microphone, my platform, in a different way, to serve fully. One of my priorities as the Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Youth is to continue eliminating the barriers faced by women, youth, and underrepresented communities. I know this year has been so difficult for students. It's clear that young people across our country have made immense sacrifices throughout the pandemic to keep those most vulnerable among us safe. Some of you have missed out on campus life, job opportunities, and chances to connect with friends and with family. Women, particularly young women, Indigenous peoples, people of color, even newcomers to Canada, have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Long-standing gender inequalities have been amplified, and it has put decades of hard-fought gains for women in the workplace at risk. But even through these challenges, I've met remarkable young people of many backgrounds who have stepped up in a huge way to support their communities during this time. As a woman, as a mom, a sister, a daughter, the MP for Toronto Centre, where this university sits, and minister, I'm committed to ensuring that your voices are heard and that your experiences inform our decisions at the cabinet table. I'm here to tell you that you each play an important role in helping us build an inclusive and equitable country. And like Mr. Alexander and the leaders who came before me, I will keep pushing to create spaces that allow you to thrive. So if I can leave you with one thing today, perhaps a headline, It is to take a page from Mr. Alexander's life and his commitment to equality, public service, and education. Be a light in your circles. Your communities need you. From the mouth of the man himself, it's not your duty to be average. It's your duty to set a higher example for others to follow. It is now my privilege to introduce my friend, my boss, the Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Thanks, Marcy, for your introduction, but it is so great to have you on this team. You are doing outstanding work on behalf of people in Toronto Centre and as Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, and having your voice front and center today on this important commemoration is really important to me and to everyone. Mais je veux aussi remercier tous les autres députés de notre équipe qui sont ici aujourd'hui. Je suis heureux de voir que tant de gens aient pu se joindre à nous en cette journée Lincoln Alexander. As we celebrate 100 years since Lincoln Alexander's birth, we have the chance to reflect on the impact of his leadership on Canada. Whether as a veteran, a lawyer, or the first Black parliamentarian in the House of Commons, Lincoln Alexander blazed a trail. He wasn't someone who was afraid to challenge the status quo in order to make this country stronger and better. Ce sont des qualités qui devraient tous nous inspirer et nous motiver. I know we've got lots of students of the Lincoln Alexander School of Law with us this afternoon. Through your education and dedication, you're carrying forward his trailblazing legacy. Young people like you are using your voices to push for change that has been long overdue, calling out systemic racism, including anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism, advocating for a more effective and fair justice system, demanding rights and dignity for all sexual and gender identities, and fighting for climate justice. Any number of things are why you're just not leaders of tomorrow. You're also leaders today. Right now, the way you are shaping your communities, your country, and your profession is changing the world. Vous faites partie de l'avenir, mais vous avez aussi votre mot à dire maintenant. Et on vous entend. On est là pour travailler en partenariat avec vous. Indeed, as a government, with the leadership of so many of our MPs and ministers, we're working to find better ways to address systemic racism. We've committed to developing a Black Canadians justice strategy and to working with Indigenous communities to address systemic barriers in the criminal justice system. We've also committed $200 million to establish a new Black-led philanthropic endowment fund that will support Black-led and Black-serving community organizations. But we know there's always more work to be done. And with your help as young leaders, we can take action on systemic inequities and build a justice system that is fair, effective, and protects the rights of all Canadians. So I can't wait to see what each of you does next. I know whatever path you choose, I have no doubt that you will keep building on the strong, just, inclusive Canada that Lincoln Alexander believed in, fought for, and contributed meaningfully and substantially in creating. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you, Prime Minister Trudeau and Minister Ian. I'd like to now welcome and introduce Dean Donna Young, the founding Dean of the Lincoln Alexander School of Law, to join us for a conversation. Before joining Ryerson University, Dean Young was the President William McKinley Distinguished Professor of Law and Public Policy at Albany Law School. In 2021, Dean Young was named a female trailblazer by the Canadian Law Awards and recognized as one of the top 25 women of influence for her contributions and influence in driving change in the legal community. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with all of you today. To get the conversation started, my first question is for Dean Young. Dean Young, what do you see as the law school's responsibility in continuing Mr. Alexander's legacy?
Thank you, Safia. I think our law school has a responsibility to help prepare our students to be skilled lawyers and engaged, informed, and compassionate citizens committed to serving their communities, and to encourage research and scholarship that serves the public interest. I think we take this responsibility seriously. We provide a unique legal education that integrates theory and practice and that helps students develop their skills. And we do this while asking our students to think deeply about the social and political context in which they will be practicing law. Lincoln Alexander would have expected as much. And we all know that he was the first in many things, and as such, he made headlines. But he will be remembered more for how he touched the lives of people and communities around the country. His personal touch, his kindness, his easy connection with people from all walks of life, these all stem from his basic respect for his fellow citizens. Mr. Alexander was known for his compassion, sound judgment, and humanity. I hope that our students will take inspiration from Mr. Alexander's life when deciding what kind of lawyer they want to become. And I can't really think of a higher goal than for our law school to train lawyers who exhibit those same qualities in both their personal and professional lives, and who strive to be a fairer and more humane society. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Dean Young. I'm certain that what you've shared has resonated with all students at the law school and all of us here today. Prime Minister Trudeau, I'm going to turn to you now. And my question for you is, how does Mr. Alexander's life and legacy inspire you as a leader in addressing racism in Canada and taking bold moves in building a diverse, inclusive, and equitable society?
Well, I think Lincoln Alexander showed, as others have as well, that you can love Canada and serve Canada and fight for Canada and dedicate your life to that service and still know how much work there is to do to make Canada better, to make Canada worthy of the ideal that we carry with us. And that's why he fought so hard to break down barriers, to push through, to become successful, but not for his own path, although he was tremendously successful in that in his own right. But it was all about making sure that the next people, as like Marcy or Jean Augustine or Greg Fergus or Ahmed Hussein or anyone who came behind in politics or in law or anything and were facing systemic barriers, would find it just a little bit easier because he had pushed hard and made that incremental change that lasts. And I think that's one of the things that inspires me, to recognize that empowering others, bringing around extraordinary people who live and see the barriers that we have every day, even in an open, respectful, pluralistic country like Canada. There is an awful lot to do, and the recognition that is being created around the country, not everywhere yet, but by so many leaders, and particularly by young people and activists and some politicians, that systemic discrimination, systemic racism is real and is everywhere and is something that we have to address, is a huge part of the legacy and the fight that he laid out, because it's not about any individual on our own. It's about the system that we're building and how we recognize those barriers and work to eliminate those barriers. So his strength, his steadfastness, his love of this country, and undeniable desire to change it and improve it and transform it for the better is something that inspires me, and continues to every day.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. I have a question for you too. What do you see as the gaps to building a more equitable and inclusive society? And how can we use Lincoln Alexander's approach to overcoming barriers to inspire the next generation of leaders?
Well, I think first of all, representation matters. It's always important to celebrate the first, but I'm less keen on seeing firsts happen than I am on sevenths and eighths and 12ths and 15ths, so that we're no longer having to celebrate something out of the ordinary or some extraordinary person breaking barriers, but that we have a much more reflective society that embodies all the full diversity and all the places of power and all the key decision makers, and that's certainly something that we need to do. So seeing it so people can be it is a huge part of it. But it's not just about seeing; it's also about listening. It's also about understanding that the experiences faced on a daily basis by racialized Canadians, by Black Canadians, by Indigenous Canadians are very different than the experience of this country that most people or many people go through. And actually understanding that the challenges that are out there are things that we all have to be fighting for, that it shouldn't just be Black parliamentarians like Lincoln Alexander and others fighting for Black success. It shouldn't just be Indigenous people carrying reconciliation. It's on all of us, from positions of privilege, from positions of vulnerability, from positions of power, from positions of influence, to take on the fight for what is right, because that's what shapes Canada. We're not a country that happened by accident, and it won't continue without effort, without Canadians of all backgrounds stepping up and fighting for each other and for the ideals that we hold up as a country. And that's something that we need to continue to do. And therefore, listening to the Black community over the past years, we knew that we have to move forward on reforms to the justice system and high levels of incarceration. And that's something absolutely that we're doing. But I was really interested to hear the need for economic empowerment as well. And that's why, in response to the request of the Black community, and it doesn't make the same kinds of headlines as the justice system reforms, but we put forward a Black endowment fund. We put forward a Black entrepreneur loan program for hundreds of millions of dollars to see that economic empowerment happen in communities. So it's not just about stopping the bad things, it's about enabling the successes that then come and transform our society in so many ways for the better. So much time is spent focused on negative, and it needs to be, that we also have to be focusing on the building and the positive. And the Black community has always been an extraordinary example of that, inspired so much by leaders like Lincoln Alexander.
Thank you.
That was a very important question, Dean Young, and thank you for sharing your perspective, Prime Minister Trudeau. Minister Ian, as you know, Lincoln Alexander was known for being a champion of youth issues. In your new portfolio, what is your vision for advancing opportunities for youth, including access to education?
Thanks so much for the question, Safia. Youth issues have always been top of mind for me, and I know they are for the Prime Minister as well. He was the first Minister of Youth after all, and there's a Prime Minister's Youth Council comprised of young people across our great country that still informs the decisions that our government makes. But when it comes to supporting young people educationally, this is something I've done for a very long time, mostly through mentorship, and something that my ministerial portfolio is doing alongside other ministers. So for example, creating training opportunities and jobs. People say the first job that you have is often the best job, because that's where you learn teamwork. That's where you learn about work ethic. That's where you goal set. That's where mentorship can take place as well. So we have programs like Canada Summer Jobs. The application period is wrapping up. So just letting those know, shout out if you're interested, employers out there, please check our government website and my social media pages as well for any information. It basically as a government, we support employers who can then hire kids who get their first job and get that job experience. Mental health is also a huge component right now through this pandemic. We know that young people are suffering, but through targeted investments, and I've been working with my friend and colleague, Minister Bennett, on this, We're going to make sure that they have the accessibility to the programs that they need. Volunteer opportunities while they're in school is important too. Canada Service Corps does that. But I have to tell you, Safia, that it's about applying an intersectional lens on everything that we do as a government. You heard about a couple of the programs that the Prime Minister highlighted. But what this means is that we're taking into account through every decision that we make underserved populations. We're getting them the supports they need. And in many of the programs that I am now honored to oversee, we're focusing on those segments of the population. Everything is seen through an intersectional lens. Populations that have been historically underserved, to make sure that no young person is falling through the cracks. Because if that happens, and when it happens, it is to our detriment. Thanks so much for the question.
I'd love to break in here and actually ask you a question, Safia. I mean, we've been talking about what we see needing to happen, but you're the one who's decided to go into law and transform from the inside our justice system. What drove you to do that? What is pushing you and some of your fellow students? And talk to me a little bit about what your generation is taking on as the continued fight and legacy that Lincoln and so many others have left before, that need to continue and need to be elevated to even further and higher heights.
Thank you for the question, Prime Minister Trudeau. Well, I was born to Trinidadian immigrant parents who pretty much sacrificed everything, including their dreams, so that I could follow mine. And through that, I was able to become the first in my family to attend university and now law school. And so my motivation to go to law school truly comes from a feeling, again, of responsibility and the desire to bridge that educational gap. In my career prior to law school, I began to understand the relationship between business, policy, law, and the individual experience. And I wanted to do more to address those tensions, because that sense and feeling of responsibility for me also extended to my community. And I truly believed a law school like Lincoln Alexander could equip me with the skills to do exactly that, while also allowing me to be in a space where I felt safe, I felt accepted, and understood for who I was as an individual and a racialized woman, and truly a space where I could see people who looked like me and people who were different from me, in the classroom, faculty, in the executive administration. My classmates and I are truly blessed and humbled to have been given that, especially during these critical, and unprecedented times. More importantly, though, our school is filled with students who genuinely understand the assignment. And we all appreciate that it's not about us as individuals, but it's about us as a collective. And we really are students who push ourselves to think critically about what could be and not just what currently is. And when my fellow classmates and I think about tackling access to justice issues, we think about both access to the profession as well as access to legal services. For us, knowledge is essentially power, and one major way that we can remove barriers to justice is by empowering others and allowing for greater access to legal information, which means equipping the public with a higher level of legal knowledge and using tools like technology to supplement the law in a way that provides quick and affordable access to even the most basic and accurate legal advice. But of course, in order to do that, it's about us, really equipping ourselves individually with this privileged legal knowledge as law students that we can then disperse into our communities. And again, to do that, it's important to create, one of the most diverse classes we possibly can, because the most diverse student body will, lead to the more diverse communities can benefit from the information that we are sharing. And, the bigger our reach, really, the closer we become to true inclusivity and really removing barriers for everyone. But that's enough for me. But before we wrap up, I wanted to actually invite you, Mr. Prime Minister, to share some final thoughts.
Just what a pleasure it is to be part of this important moment as we celebrate the extraordinary legacy of Lincoln Alexander. Thank you, Erica, for being part of it and representing his family and the continued legacy that he leaves behind. I want to thank Ryerson, Mohammed, Donna, Sophia, everyone who's been involved in elevating not just Lincoln Alexander's name, but his legacy and continuing the fight. All the students at the School of Law are incredibly important in continuing to push for a better Canada with greater diversity, greater respect, greater inclusion, and a greater intolerance of intolerance. We need to continue to push hard every single day at a time where the world is divided and is anxious and is angry in some ways. We're all exhausted through this pandemic and being inspired about our ability to shape our communities is something that we've seen throughout this pandemic as Canadians have stepped up to help their neighbors, to help the most vulnerable, to support people. And that legacy of care, of service, I think is going to resonate a long time beyond this pandemic, but it'll live on in institutions like the Lincoln Alexander School of Law. I also want to recognize Elizabeth Dowdeswell for her participation today and Lincoln's role as Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, groundbreaking on that. It's good to see the continuity here. But I also want to especially thank my colleagues, people like Marcy and Greg and Ahmed Hussein and others who've been extraordinary voices for all Canadians. Yes, carrying important messages for the Black community, but really fighting for the values that Canada and Canadians have always stood for, but that we have also always fallen short on fully embodying because there's a lot of work still to do. But I know that today and upcoming in the month of February and Black History Month, but also every day and every month, we will continue to dedicate ourselves to a better future.
Always work to do. That is key to remember. Thank you, Prime Minister Trudeau, Minister Ian, and Dean Young for what I hope is the start of a very meaningful dialogue. I'd like to now hand it over to Dean Young, who will share reflections and make a very special announcement.
Thank you, Safia, and thank you, Minister Ian and Prime Minister Trudeau for joining our conversation and being with us today. As the founding dean of the Lincoln Alexander School of Law, it's my privilege to celebrate this important milestone with our students, faculty, staff, and partners. And most importantly, the Alexander family, who have entrusted us to continue the legacy of Mr. Alexander. He was a visionary, and as a veteran, a lawyer, a civic leader, he consistently championed inclusion and advocated for social and racial justice. Ideas that may not have been welcomed or properly understood during his time, but he also believed in the power of education and access to it as a way for him to transform his own circumstances and that of others. He carried this belief with him throughout his life and ultimately served as the chancellor at the University of Guelph for an unprecedented 5 terms. And much like our namesake, we too have a bold vision to shape a different kind of lawyer, one who challenges the status quo, embraces innovation, and designs solutions to address societal and system-level challenges. Since launching our law school during the pandemic in 2020, our faculty, staff, and partners in the legal community have worked tirelessly in a partnership to create a rigorous and innovative curriculum that harnesses technology, design thinking, blends legal theory, and sought-after practical skills, and graduates leaders motivated and equipped to expand the reach of justice. I'm incredibly proud of our students who have helped to shape our vision and have demonstrated their commitment to creating meaningful and lasting change in their communities. During this really difficult time, our students have not only excelled academically at the provincial and national levels, but they've taken on roles in tech startups, government agencies, and social justice initiatives, all while cultivating a welcoming and inclusive law school community. And as Canada's newest law school, it's been heartening to see like-minded individuals and organizations step forward in support of our vision. So today, on the 100th anniversary of Lincoln Alexander's birth, I am honored to announce that Ed and Fran Sunshine have generously made a $1 million gift to establish the Edward Sunshine Chair in Race and the Law. This transformational gift will inform the direction of our racial justice initiative and will create a new and first of its kind chair positioned to examine the role of law in both current and historical injustices. The support of the Sunshines will ensure that the legal education we offer to our students continues to include a critical examination of the role of law in perpetuating anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination, and importantly, an understanding of how the law can be employed as a tool for dismantling oppressive systems and advancing justice for all. As a lawyer himself, Mr. Sunshine understands adversity and appreciates the role that lawyers can play in building a more fair and just society. Born in Bergen-Belsen displaced persons camp in Germany, Mr. Sunshine immigrated to Canada with his family as a young child. Both he and his wife, Fran, are children of Holocaust survivors. It is our pleasure to invite Mr. Sunshine to share a few words with our community. At this time, please join me in watching this message of support.
I graduated 5th from Osgoode Hall Law School, yet there were 10 firms that I couldn't even get an appointment to apply for an articling position because they just didn't hire Jews, period, end of story. And we're quite open about it. For the longest time, for about 10 years, which was a very bad time, 38 to 48, Jews simply weren't admitted to Canada. None is too many, which is what some cabinet minister said, well, we've got a lot of Jewish refugees who are trying to flee the Nazis, who are trying to kill them. How many should we let in? And the answer was, none is too many. And that's the title of a brilliant book by Irving Abella, who's Madam Justice Rosalie Abella's husband. She was also born in a refugee camp the same way I was. When they see me, a chairman of this and on the board of the Royal Bank for 10 years, and they go, wow, he must have had it easy. It wasn't always so easy. First years were really hard. Neither of my parents spoke English, had no money. So, I think a lot of immigrants came over, they worked for one thing, that me and my brother could get educated. It's a privilege to be in a position to make a donation, to be able to give this donation to a new law school named after one of the finest gentlemen I had the pleasure of meeting, Mr. Lincoln Alexander. Canada should be known for its fairness. It hasn't always lived up to the right standards, and I think it's up to lawyers who understand the law and shape the law to make sure that racial justice and making sure everybody, no matter what their ethnicity, the color of their skin, their orientation, their religion, gets the same opportunities and treatment under the law.
We are truly privileged to hear those powerful pieces of Mr. Sunshine's story. On behalf of the students at the Lincoln Alexander School of Law, thank you, Mr. Sunshine, for your very generous investment in our law school's vision. We are now pleased to share messages of support from the Honorable Bob Ray and the Honorable Jean Augustine.
Link Alexander, his honor, as I called him, was a great friend of mine. I had the great honor of serving him as his premier when he was lieutenant governor. We were friends together in the Canadian Parliament, although we were in different parties. He was a man of great good humor, of great wisdom, of great courage. He made a huge difference in the lives of millions of people across Canada and around the world. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He was just a very, very fine man. And I'm so delighted to pay tribute to him and to the law school on the occasion of his 100th anniversary. Great to be with you.
I am so very pleased to join with you at the Lincoln-Alexander School of Law at Ryerson as you celebrate the 100th birthday of the Honorable Lincoln Alexander. I knew Lincoln Alexander well over the years and watched his progress in politics, his involvement in the community, and his representation of the community. He was a man of stature. He was a man of integrity and dignity. He also was very much a man who knew what the word ally meant. In today's world, when we speak about allies, we're talking about those people who are not of our race and our color and who understand our situation and can join us as we work towards social justice. Lincoln knew what an ally was, what an ally could be, and what working in allyship could make for community cohesion. I admired his resilience. I admired the fact that he was able over the many years to have that representation. Congratulations to all of you who are part of the Lincoln Alexander School of Law.
Thank you, Ambassador Ray and Ms. Augustine, for your generous words. As we head into the home stretch of our celebration, it is now our distinct pleasure to introduce an earlier recorded performance by Dora Award-winning actress and acclaimed vocalist, Jackie Richardson. Ms. Richardson knew Mr. Alexander and performed at his Celebration of Life ceremony. In this jazz performance, Ms. Richardson is joined by the members of the Swing Shift Big Band.
No complaints, no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams, placing bets. For I have learned that all you give is all you get. You better give it all you got. See, I've had my share, drank my fill, and even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still to see what's down another road beyond the hill. I wanna do it all again. So here's to life, and every joy it brings. Here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. Funny how the time flies, how love can go from warm hellos to sad goodbyes, then leave you with the memories you've memorized to keep those winters warm. There is no yes in yesterday. Who knows what tomorrow brings or takes away? Long as I am in the game, I wanna play for laughs, for life, for love. Oh, here's to life, and every it brings. Here's to life, to all those dreamers and their dreams. May all your storms be weathered, and all that's good get better. Here's to life, here's to love, here's to you. And all that's good get better. Here's to life, here's to love, here's to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackie Richardson, for such a powerful performance and very fitting tribute to Lincoln Alexander. Well, this has been an incredible experience, but our time together has come to an end. We hope you feel inspired by Mr. Lincoln Alexander's life and are encouraged to seize both the opportunities and obstacles in your own journey.
We'd like to thank our guests, Erica Alexander, Rendell Ajay, Jackie Richardson, Dean Donna Young, President Mohammed Lashmi, the Honorable Jean Augustine, Ambassador Bob Ray, Minister Marcy Ian, the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dadswell, and the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau. And a very special thanks to all of you joining today and sending social media messages. Heba shared on Twitter that she's Lincoln proud because Mr. Alexander provided a voice for the communities who were silenced and became a role model for future generations to come. If you enjoy the celebration, please let us know by posting a message on social media using the hashtag Lincoln100. You can also sign up to receive updates on future events by visiting our website at ryerson.ca/law. We hope to see you soon. In the meantime, take care, stay warm, and be well.